with a short meditation to become present. Because today is Yom HaShoah, or the end of Yom HaShoah, the end of Holocaust Remembrance Day, I'd like us to start with just a minute of silence. And then after that, I'll begin kind of the guided meditation. Now that our minute of remembering those who were killed in the Holocaust is over, let us have a short meditation. So please breathe in through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And as you go at your own pace, if thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them pass. Like watching a cloud float by in the sky. Now is not the time for solving problems. Now all we need to do is inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, if thoughts should come into your head, oops, we already did that. On your next inhale, think to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema. Listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema. Listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, friends, it's nice to see you. I enjoyed my vacation last week, and I'm also very happy to be back with you here today. Today, we're going to start exploring the soul trait of humility. Now, first, before we do that, okay, I'm looking to try to share my slides. Okay, something weird is going on here, sorry. Oh, I closed my PowerPoint, that's why. Okay, so let's try that again. Okay, can you see the slides? Yes, okay, great. Last time we were talking about Behira points or choice points, and I know that at least a couple of you met with a partner last week and talked about them. But we talked about sort of becoming present, observing what's going on around you, making mindful decisions in times where maybe we were acting by rote or out of habit. So I'd love to hear, what were some of the key choices or choice points that you've made, in the last week or so? Moments of mindfulness. I can't see all of you. Actually, I will stop the share here. So please unmute yourself and let me know. Yeah, Joanne.
Well, I started counting the Omer, which is something I have never done in my entire life.
Hmm.
And I think I started it because I was leading a Seder, and in the Haggadah it said, on the second Seder, tonight is the first night of the Omer, and say this prayer and go. So then I've been continuing it. And I think it was last night or the night before, I was like getting ready to go to sleep. I said, I forgot. So that's something new. I don't know what spiritual benefit will come of it, but
Hmm.
it is a thing of awareness.
Hmm.
It's a thing of time passing
Mhm.
and you're not supposed to say out loud what before you do the actual count with the blessing,
Hmm.
what the day is, like if yesterday was the 11th, you don't say today is the, before you do the blessing. So it's interesting.
Hmm.
And then my other choice points, well, I was very bad over Pesach in terms of eating, and I'm back on my path. So,
Okay.
so I feel good about that.
Great.
Instead of going like, I just give up. I had all those macaroons and, you know,
Being gentle with yourself,
yeah,
forgiving, moving on. I
yeah.
love it. Lois, wonderful to see you. Hi. Thanks for joining. We're talking about hero points or choice points, just as a little closing from last session before we get on to humility. It's funny, I've just started counting the Omer. I sort of played around with it a little bit last year. I'm starting to do it this year. And yeah, it's interesting. See kind of where that takes me. Anyone else have any moments of mindfulness or choice points that they would like to share? Okay, well, that is just fine because we have some really cool stuff we're going to talk about today. So we can get right to the action now. Okay, so one of the things, and I included a little reading about this in the email that went out today, is the key concept, the fourth one, which we are up to, is that the soul traits or the midot are our levers for growth. So I'm curious, what do people think about that? What does it mean for a soul trait to be a lever for growth?
Well, I think it's some, again, if you're being aware of something that maybe you weren't before. I mean, it was something I did. I realized, like I say this prayer, the nighttime, bedtime Shema, okay? And every day you say, I forgive everyone who may have offended me or did this to me or that, whether my body, my money, my this, my that. Let no one be punished because of me. And I realized after, sometime after that, maybe it was 2 days ago, that I'm still holding grudges against certain things and people. And I said, I gotta just drop that because I'm saying this prayer every night, but I didn't do what I was supposed to do. I'm still blaming people for doing this and that, and I'm grumpy about this certain subject, and just give it up. I don't know.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, so awareness, that's part of it. Carrie.
I have found since starting to study Mussar that when I'm in situations, I stop and I think, okay, what character traits am I dealing with right now? What was my old normal reaction, and how can I change that if I want to, using what I've learned from Mussar? And I've had several instances in the past couple of weeks where that has happened. I had to euthanize my dog, and that was very painful. So that a lot of the Middot came in handy there. And now I'm at my daughter's, who just had a baby, and I'm practicing humility because I don't want to be in her face the whole time. And I need to understand, how much space I can take up and be helpful. So it's been a life changer for me.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Carrie. And what I'm hearing you say in terms of our question about levers for growth is you gave an example of, okay, I'm at my daughter's and maybe I have an inclination to give a ton of advice. And that's probably not going to be really well appreciated by the new sleep-deprived mom who's just trying to figure things out. So I'm trying to, and my lever for growth is humility. So if I kind of remember that humility is about not taking up too much space sometimes, I can help myself grow by kind of leveraging the humility lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great example. Yeah, Wendy.
Congratulations, Carrie. That's so cool. Well, mine's a little bit more general. I'm thinking that our soul traits are levers for growth in the way that one person might have trouble with one soul trait, but then they might be pretty accomplished handling another one. But I noticed that they're interwoven, as I've been trying to work on several. They're interwoven, and so that sometimes if you concentrate and you practice a soul trait, and then you have some positivity there, and you actually like, I don't know, you have some success, then that leads to the next soul trait. And well, how are you going to do this if you don't have this soul trait? And in other words, like yesterday I was involved with a meeting, and there was like there was a quote from Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, and about one of the Middot, and it's fear and awe. And then we were supposed to kind of discuss that with a partner. But what I realized is that fear can often lead to awe. And then the same thing comes, fear can lead to humility, and humility can lead to awe, is what I saw in this particular lesson that we were doing. And that when I'm afraid of something, like if I see I'm backpacking and then I'm at the precipice and I look out and I'm afraid, and then all of a sudden I have humility because I can't really help myself at this point. I have to trust, that's another soul trait. I have to trust, and then I have humility because I didn't create all this. This is absolutely amazing. And that's when the awe comes in. So I think one soul trait leads to another, and that's like a lever.
Yeah, thank you. And what I'll add to that, because I think you sort of beautifully described kind of how they're all interconnected, and we can kind of move from one to the other. And in some ways, the boundaries are a little bit arbitrary because it's a soul trait. It's a piece of the soul. We have one soul, and I often think of a soul trait is a human categorization trying to understand something that's bigger than all of us. Like if you're just trying to like take on the soul, it's like I'm trying to boil the ocean, Well, if I can understand the cosmos, then things will be fine. It's like, okay, well, good luck with that. But maybe it's like, all right, let me try to understand the orbit of the moon. That's like a little piece of something much bigger. And if I understand that piece, maybe it's like, oh, and I can also understand the orbit of the Earth. And wow, and then the star itself is moving. And so suddenly, by looking at little pieces at a time. And I think what's interesting about this Tikkun Middot curriculum that we're doing is it takes a very, by saying it's a lever for growth, it's a very activist stance. It's like, okay, I'm working on this thing, or I've come up with this situation, and I'm going to very actively like try to engage with this soul trait. It's like, okay, I want to get better at lifting my groceries, so I'm going to do some arm curls, to really try to strengthen that muscle. And if I'm having a challenge in a certain area, I'm going to try to do some spiritual exercises to kind of strengthen those muscles and use the midot in that way. That make sense to everybody? All right, so let's see if we delve into humility. As I said in my weekly email, I want to spend most of our time on these readings from Duties of the Heart. I'm just going to share this. Well, the first paragraph is saying humility in English, we think of that as being sort of meek. And may I have someone to read this second paragraph to talk about anava, which is the Hebrew word for humility, how that's sort of different than our English word. Maybe someone we haven't heard from yet today.
I'll read. Anava means taking the appropriate space and stepping up when called. These are not activities for the meek. To live with anava takes self-knowledge and clear thinking about the situation at hand. Anava is the midah most closely associated with living in alignment with one's true soul.
Thanks, Jane. Thank you. So to the group, so what is Rabbi Jaffe sort of telling us? What are some of the key elements about anava? I can't see you all, so please just feel free to unmute yourself.
So it seems, this is Paul, it seems that it's more than just stepping back and with the sense of, well, I'm not going to take up a lot of space. But it's also being aware that sometimes it means stepping forward, taking more space than we may be accustomed to doing. So if it turns out that we are being called to take more of a, I don't know, maybe a leadership role, or maybe it's just we're being called to speak our truth, and that's not comfortable, then it's sort of being sensitive to what the moment requires.
Being sensitive to what the moment requires. Well said. I love that. Thank you so much. What else? Is there anything else? I'm really struck by this being in alignment with one's true soul. And I think Paul spoke to that a little bit, but what is that all about, being in alignment with one's true soul?
I think it's striking a balance and knowing your own worth. One of the things that people assume is if you're humble, then you think you're not worth something, but that's quite the reverse. You understand that you are worth this, but not more than that. You're not God. You're not even close to God.
Yeah.
But you're powerful enough to occupy enough space so that if somebody says, oh, tries to diminish you, you are not diminished. You understand where this, I think it's also has to do with boundaries. It's a boundary. You don't cross this, because if you do, you are diminishing me, and you don't get to do that.
Yeah, wonderful.
Nor do I get to diminish you.
Right. We have an important job of setting boundaries for ourselves, and we have an equally important job of recognizing other people's boundaries. It's kind of like what Carrie was talking about. Okay, I need to recognize my daughter's boundaries and tread a little bit lightly here. And, and of course, people don't always tell you, and you don't always know, so it takes adjustment and communication to kind of get to that right balance and that right point. I also tend to think about like being in alignment with one's true soul is like, I have like, images of maybe my younger self or other people who is like, God, what I really want to be doing with my life is X, but unfortunately I'm doing Y. And every day kind of sucks because I don't like Y. But if I could actually go off and do what, live my dream, then, and I'm going to take the courage to kind of express myself, and I'm going to speak to my spouse about, you know what, I want to quit my job and I want to do something else. And I want to open a bakery, and you know, I want to make, you know, whatever it may be. What do you mean you want to be a baker? You can't even cook eggs. You want to be a baker, you know, so, but you know, whatever it is, whatever is in alignment with my true soul. That's kind of where that sort of image, where it's like living your dream, you know, of course, in a responsible, interconnected way, but that's sort of what comes to mind for me. Okay, may I have another, I love this reading. I came across it today from the Mussar Torah commentary. Another volunteer to read this, please. And maybe somebody new.
The finest, I'll go ahead. The finest fabrics, metals, and gems were reserved for the high priest, yet they were used to remind him that there is a place and need for every tribe and every person. To adorn him with this accessory meant to burden him with his responsibility for others. 4 rows of 3 stones leave no single center point, yet as there is no single individual as the center of the people of Israel.
Thank you, Kathy. This is talking about like this sort of big breastplate that the Israelites made for Aaron, the high priest, you know, which was very fancy and very ornate. And so Rabbi Leah Lewis, what is her point about the structure of this, you know, and had all these jewels and gold and all this stuff, and it was very beautiful. But what's the point? Is this to make Aaron feel important? You know, so he had like the gaudiest, you know, costume that made Elton John look like a poser, you know, or what? You know, what was the point of all of this?
Well, it says about responsibility, and it reminds me of the old line about to whom much is given, much is expected. So if you're given this power, you're also expected to use it in a wise and thoughtful way.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you are responsible for the holiness of the entire Jewish nation. You gotta like be there and ask for forgiveness for their sins. And, you know, this was all serious business. You know, this wasn't about you, you know, being full of pomp and circumstance.
I think that's called noblesse oblige.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where it comes from.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yes. So again, this is part of the situation is that, you know, as Paul said, sometimes we need to step forward. And if we do step forward, you know, there's responsibility that comes with that too. Or if we're entrusted with a leadership position, there's a responsibility to the people that we're leading.
I also think it's a warning too, because though he has all this responsibility, is that he's not necessarily like end all be all for everyone. I mean, everybody has their place. Every tribe is important. And, you know, I think the last sentence speaks to me about, you know, he's not, you know, everything. I mean, everyone's important. No, you know, there's not one single individual as the center for the people of Israel.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, they could have created a design with concentric circles with one big jewel in the middle. You know, that gives a very different kind of design that communicates something else. You know, this is, you know, they're all sort of on the same level.
It's for each tribe.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So this was the reading that I shared. This is what I wanted to spend some time on here. So again, may I have a volunteer to read this, please?
Sure, I'll read it. When I planned to execute my decision to write this book, I saw that one like me is unworthy of writing a book such as this. I surmised that my ability would not suffice to analyze all the necessary aspects, owing to the difficulty which I perceived and to my wisdom being insufficient and my mind being too weak to grasp all of the issues, and that I am not fluent in the Arabic language in which I wrote it. I feared that I would toil at something that would evidence my inability and that it would be a presumptuous undertaking, so that I considered changing my mind and abandoning my previous decision. Duties of the Heart by Rabbi Bachya ibn Pakuda.
Thank you. So this is, these words were written 1,000 years ago, around the year 1065 in Spain, in Judeo-Arabic. So what was holding him back? What's going on here? Can anyone else relate to these feelings?
Low self-esteem.
Yeah, some low self-esteem, some self-doubts. What else?
Maybe he was being realistic.
Maybe.
He's not that good in Arabic,
Yeah.
But I mean, he could get help with that, or have somebody proofread it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's not impossible.
I think being aware of your limitations, your weaknesses, as well as your strengths is really important. And not fooling ourselves, because they'll give us an inflated ego. I think that's important.
That is certainly true. Does this read like someone who's sort of taking stock of their strengths and weaknesses? Carrie, what do you think?
I don't think he's giving himself credit for what he is able to do. Just focusing on the negative instead of the positive. And therefore, kind of, I don't know if he didn't paralyze himself because he wrote the book, but he's making it harder for himself instead of focusing on what he does have to offer.
Yeah.
I would add to that myself that I have plenty of opportunities in my life, and certainly at work, where I have an idea and somehow I think that I have to be the only one to carry it out, in which case I am insufficient on many different levels. And I am, I have to remind myself that I would have, being part of a team is realizing this is not my strength, but other people have that. And it's okay to hand this part off and see if they would contribute. So, if I hold it all, that if I don't have all these skills, then this is not worth pursuing. That is certainly something I face a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Paul. So you're sort of, leveraging the idea that there's other people, that this may be my idea, but there's other people that can help. Janos, I saw your hand as well.
Yeah, I think that what we read here that described the whole Mussar idea and philosophy, or what to call it, altogether, actually touches me a lot, because actually that was so liberating for me, realizing that all my midot is, so you can slide them left or right towards more one or another area. So when I'm too humble, then I will never engage in this creativity. I can do this. Like the author did. But if you are too all the way to the left, then they are too all arrogant, all of that. So that's I think so my story that attracted me to the whole Mussar school, that I realized it's my duty and it's my schedule to keep tuning up to my best combination that would work me, and how can I help the world with my decisions.
Yeah, thank you. It's very well said about sort of tuning into the right place along the spectrum. And it seems, I think part of what you're implying is in this first paragraph, it seems like he's like a little bit on the I'm too humble. It's like, oh my God, it's like a litany of excuses, or a litany of, can'ts. When my wife and I, we grew up on the East Coast, and we met in Boston in grad school and moved to California in the 90s. And we were postdocs, and we went on a little weekend getaway, and we met this couple at this bed and breakfast. And what do you do? It's like, oh, we used to be in the corporate world. And then, we really liked bike riding, and we really liked France. So we started a company where we lead people on bike tours through France. And that's what we do. And we were just like, wow, we love California. People just they just go out. You're like, nobody in the East Coast was talking about, I had this dream, so I just started this business, and it's very much kind of like living in tune with your soul. And, you know, when you first think of this idea, I'm gonna start leading bike tours around California, you could get the whole, or around France. Oh, how would I buy the tickets? And I hardly speak any French. And there's money conversion issues, and the imagination can bring up all kinds of things that, you know, and would have to get a bank checking account, and, you know, and they can get overwhelming if we think of these. And it's not to say that they're not issues, but it doesn't mean that they're unsolvable. So is anyone, yeah, Randy.
Yeah, I had a thought, because humility, at least in the society we live in, it doesn't carry forth the concept. I was trying to think, because when I think of humility, if the Middot, the virtues, are like rungs on a ladder, humility is, or on a stairway, humility is where we hold on and we find our place in balance. You can't, it's not a good thing to walk up a ladder and not hold on to whatever, you can have your feet on the rails, but you've got to hold on with both hands. And like with what we read, the tone of voice is because when people have humility, they can laugh at themselves. Is what I find in that what we just read. Well, if he could be just moaning and groaning, oh, I'm not up to this. But what I really think he's saying, oh, you know, look at me, you know, I have all these things that, you know, but I'm going to do this thing, you know, but I'm going to do it in awareness. And in doing that, it's like, how would you say you find your place in the world? You have balance and wholeness and completeness, and you can't do, I wonder if that's why humility we're doing next, because you can't do anything else without having humility. Maybe isn't the best word, because I know like in Hebrew there's root words, and it's like anava sounds a lot like ahava. And that's like with one of the big things, well, you got to love, you know, the rest of the world besides yourself. You got to love God. You got to love other people. You got to be taking care of the whole world and aware of your place in it. And that's what I think he's saying.
Thank you, Randy. You know, you're reminding me, you know, what's so remarkable about this is the first full Mussar book is, you know, this is a man 1,000 years ago who's being vulnerable. Where have you ever read, and like, you know, he's like being vulnerable. He's like putting it out there. He's like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Yeah, Kathy.
It's been a long time since I've read the 61-page introduction that this paragraph's in. But, you know, I don't know, I agree he's being vulnerable, but when you keep reading the introduction, I mean, he's so knowledgeable and it's so fascinating. And so it overshadows any few comments that he might have made that seemed humble. I'm not saying it was too not humble, but it was just, you know, it's a 61-page introduction before you even started.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue, because I have on the next slide, like the next paragraph. So let's see where he goes with this.
Oh no.
Ta-da. Okay. All right. So may I have a volunteer to read this paragraph?
I can't see.
Lois, are you trying to read? I think you need to unmute.
Muted.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm designed to remove this laborious burden from myself and desist from composing the work. I reconsidered and became suspicious of myself for having chosen to rest and to dwell in the abode of laziness in peace and tranquility. And I feared that it was the desire of the evil passion which was placing thought within me. And I know that many minds have been lost out of apprehension, and many losses have been caused by fear. if all those involved in good causes were to remain silent and still until they could completely attain their ideal, no one would ever say a word after the prophets who were chosen by God.
Thank you, Lois.
I
Wow.
love that last line. If all those involved in good causes were to remain silent and still,
Mhm.
they could completely attain their ideal. That's a
Mhm.
great phrase.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to start the bike touring business in France until I've, brushed up on my French, and I've taken an accounting course, and I've, read up on, how to manage other people's passports. Well, then you're not biking around France. So yeah. Beautiful. What else jumps out at people from this? I'm going to leave this one up on the screen, so I'm not going to see most of you because there's a lot of, we could spend the whole week just analyzing this line.
What comes to me is we can't always focus on this. There are lots of things that we need to focus on. And sometimes we do need to rest. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe the rest, he was feeling overwhelmed and he said, okay, I'm not going to do this. And after a couple of weeks of resting, he got his head back together and he's like, what was really going on here? And absolutely, that's an important part of the picture. Yeah, Joanne.
Yeah, it just reminded me of Moses when God tells him he wants him to go back and take the Israelites out of Egypt. And Moses is giving him all kinds of reasons why his speech isn't good and this and that. But he was chosen to do this. So, it's kind of, I think we discussed this also about sometimes it's fear that makes us not take action when we should and could.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's sort of what he's talking about here. It's like, I was having a lot of fears. Maybe some of those fears were justified. Yeah, I'm not that good at Arabic, but I bet he was pretty good at it when he was done with this book. As Kathy was pointing out, I think this is a long book, and it's nothing like writing a huge book in Arabic to get better at Arabic, that's for sure.
When you step out into something new, you have to take a leap of trust. I'm thinking back to when I decided to be a teacher. I was already mature. I didn't decide right out of college. And I thought, what do I really have to offer here? I don't know what I'm doing. And I got out of teaching college and I thought, I still don't know what I'm doing. I just did my student teaching. I don't know what I'm doing. And I substituted for 2 years. Felt like I still didn't know what I was doing. I finally got a full-time job. Took me that long. And I had to just step off. And it's very scary to take that leap. But if you don't, you don't really get anywhere. But I was thinking, yeah, these kids are scary, these little fourth graders. They're going to eat me alive. And they kind of did for a while.
Yeah.
It was actually the substituting that ate me alive more than anything else. But because I had a long-term substitute with a fourth grade from hell, they were really troubled children, and not a lot of principal support. So yeah, talk about a trial by fire. But I had to take, and again, that was a choice point. Do I take this long-term sub job or do I just keep doing what I was doing? And I decided to take the long-term sub job, which was supposed to be for a few weeks, turned into 6 months. And was very, very difficult.
Yes.
So, if you don't do it though, you never know.
Right. Yeah. Very, very well said. And I wanted to highlight before we move on and go to our breakout groups, again, we're talking about beginning this course, with sort of self-awareness, hit lamdu with self-learning, and then with making choice points, and how he's describing, I became suspicious, the evil passion, that's the evil inclination, this was my That's my hindbrain where all of this is coming from. These are my fears, which are placing these thoughts in me. And do I want to be ruled by them? That's kind of leveraging the midot. It's like, well, it's my humility. What, as Kathy said, this is a really, really smart man. He was probably a leader in his community. It's like, well, I'm a pretty smart dude. And if, no one else has done this, it's not going to get done. So I'm going to give it my best shot. Okay. So here is our topic for our breakout groups today. So for those of you who are new, we're going to go into groups. You'll be with one or two other people. And these are sort of confidential, no cameras, no judgment, just listening. And so we try to we can sort of share where we are. And then there's a discussion topic. So may I have a volunteer? Actually, I'll just read this so we can get along. So this is from Rabbi Abraham Isaac Cook. He said, Anava is the perfect vessel for receiving blessing. When we live with Anava, we receive the blessing of experiencing our own souls and bringing the blessing of our true selves to all who know us. We were talking about this idea of true self. So, you'll each have a few minutes, but maybe talk a little bit about how does experiencing your own soul bring the blessing of your true self to other people? And so what's one part of your true self, or what's one part of your soul that you'd like to share with others? I'll also put this in the chat. Okay, we'll stop the share. This will go into the chat. And then I will open the breakout rooms. Okay, so the rooms are open. You should see something on your screen which says join breakout room. So please click on that. Okay. Joanne, I don't know if you're still here. Nope, okay, it is just me. Which means hello everyone, welcome back. So, does anyone have anything they would like to share about sharing your soul or serving others?
Well, we talked about how when you know yourself and you know your abilities and limitations, you can be more useful. You know your boundaries, you know who you are. You can be more useful. You can do more things. Be more helpful to other people and put yourself out there, because you're not being stopped by all this fear and self whatever. I can't think of the word.
Yes.
I hate that senior moment.
Knowing yourself helps, absolutely, and can help sort of overcome some of those fears. Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
Who else? I've talked about something interesting.
I think it was interesting. So Carrie talked about how enthusiasm is an important part of her creative process in teaching art. And Paul talked about kind of like being a team player and being kind to others and working working in a team, even though he'd like to be the hero sometimes. but he also brings that kindness, of course, to his grandchildren. And
Yeah, well,
I
we
think,
can let that, Joanne, we can let them sort of share their own stories.
well, mine was
Insights
just,
you had.
I also said sharing my empathy and kindness. I think that's my best soul trait. And I actually did that in my old job a lot, which was customer service.
Yeah. Well, that is a job which takes a lot of empathy and kindness. And yeah,
Some people don't have it.
absolutely. Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. Who else have gifts that they want to share? Lois, are you trying to
What
share that? Yeah.
What I talked about was the fact that I am in a lot of meetings. One of them is a Mussar meeting, and I'm having difficulty not letting myself feel irritated at some of the people that just want to take it away and talk about all sorts of other things, and people that talk too much. And something that Carol said, and I don't remember the exact words, but they were very good about not letting someone, they cannot impinge. I don't think that was her word, but on her, she will not impinge on them, and there's a boundary. So I'm kind of thinking around that about, keeping my own boundaries, not letting myself get irritated by people who aren't doing Mussar or just chattering.
Yeah, oh, that just reminds me, this week, like, I'm part of a group and we're trying to work on someone, and somebody sent an email which really upset me. Like, I was so upset. I was like, God, what, it was like, and I was thinking, it's like, dude, what are you like so worked up about, and it was, I was thinking about Giverah and boundaries, and it's just like, it was way, so I totally relate to, it's like, just not letting this other person, like, and they were just like, it wasn't even like a toxic thing they did particularly, but boy, was it annoying to me, and a little obnoxious, but it was like, so it's like, I guess for our theme, it's like, okay, well, what soul trait is that? And how can I use that as a lever for growth? And how can I let them in my space, that was my space, my sleep is my space. And how can I let that go? And, they're doing their thing, fine, have at it. Yes. Anyone else?
Greg, this is Tracy. I don't know if
Yeah,
you
hi,
can hear me.
Tracy.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, I am hiding a little. So we talked a little bit, or I talked a little bit about when I am around people and I judge things, I have a judgment, how that kind of closes off a lot of opportunities for good things to come my way or into my life, or even to other people, because I'm already making a preconceived notion or judgment, and I'm shutting off things to come in. And I was using an example, like I can go to someone's home, to a party, although nowadays I don't go to parties, where I think, oh, this is going to be terrible, and I go there, or I'm not going to have fun, and I go there, and because I already have that notion in my head, I'm not open to meeting people and having a good experience. And if I go somewhere without judging and just being open, then I'm this vehicle, like I'm this vessel where good things can come my way, and I can also be friendlier and warmer and more open to everyone around me. So I'm really aware of judgment and how that ties into my own humility. Like, who am I to judge? And why do I think that why should I judge anybody, and who should judge me? So anyway, it just really ties into the whole humility midot for me.
Thank you for sharing that, Tracy. And yeah, that's a very powerful example, again, of leveraging the midot. It's like, okay, well, if I'm not judging them and I'm just kind of going and being myself in my own space, suddenly I'm a vessel for good things to happen, and making a friend or having an interesting conversation. So it's, yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Before we go, I wanted to highlight a practice opportunity for the coming week. Can you see this slide? Yeah, so in terms of a mantra that you can write down and work on, it's not too much, not too little. Something you can write down, put by your bedside, put on a sticky note in your mirror in the bathroom, just something to remind you when you begin the day. And spending even a minute or two, like chanting it or concentrating on it, reading it out loud over and over again, it can really frame the day. So you can start looking at your boundaries in your space, and is it too much, is it too little? And then in terms of a practice, choose one time each day to notice how much space you are taking. And then kind of measure it. Is it too much? Is it too little? Is it the right amount? And then I think as Jano said, we can slide the bar a little bit. Well, what if I were to take up a little bit more space? What if I were to take up a little bit less space? And then in different sorts of circumstances, we can notice, how our anava or our humility is impacted or triggered or not triggered. Any comments or questions about this practice? All right, well, there will be a test. I'm not going to give you the test, but life will give you the test. So, you can prepare for the test or you can just be blindsided by it. So that is your choice, but there is always a test. So on that note, let's close our eyes together to close our sacred space for today. Once again, taking a nice leisurely breath in through the nose and hold. A nice leisurely exhale through the mouth. And let's envision ourselves surrounded by a little glowing bubble, which is that right amount of space. When we walk into some rooms, that space gets bigger. And when we're in other places, that space gets smaller. It's the natural breathing of the universe. Sometimes our space gets bigger, sometimes our space gets smaller. And learning to be in harmony with our true selves and in harmony with that right amount of space. That is our opportunity for this week. Now let us take a moment of gratitude, this hour together in sacred community. When you're ready, you may open your eyes. Friends, thank you so much for being here. It has been wonderful to see you. Hey, Elizabeth, we were just wrapping up here. So I will look forward to seeing you next week when we do our second week of humility.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.